You are now listening to the House by the Video Store podcast.
Groovy. No more room in hell. The dead will walk near.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God, big boy.
Welcome to the House by the Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello.
And in this episode, we'll be reviewing the new movie Lights Out that just hit theaters. But before we get to that, we'll go through some things we've been watching and some news. And to kick off with some news, the trailer that you may have seen run before, if you've seen any horror films in theaters since about May, you've probably seen a trailer for the movie The Woods. Or if you look online, you've seen it because it's directed by Adam Wingard, who did You're Next and The Guest.
Who is a big favorite of yours?
Yeah, I like...
And I really like him too. You're the person that turned him on to me.
Yeah, I just really loved The Guest and kind of went back. But so there's this movie that's kind of mysterious. It looked like it was kind of a found footage movie in the woods. And then at San Diego Comic-Con, it was announced that it is actually the Blair Witch. So this movie's been promoted for a few months as The Woods, and they revealed that it's the Blair Witch. And I don't think they told anybody. They just had a screening of it, and then they found out while watching it that that's what it was, which would have been an incredibly cool moment, but now no one else could have it.
Yeah.
But, so when Derek and I saw Lights Out, the trailer for The Woods played before the movie, and then after we left the movie, I checked Twitter, I saw that it was the Blair Witch. So,
Well, see, I went to see Lights Out after you guys did, so I knew about the Blair Witch, and then the trailer came up right before Lights Out, and I thought, oh, this is the Blair Witch. I'm like, wow, did they already? Because I hadn't seen the Woods trailer in theaters before.
Yeah, I've saw
and
it
I
a couple
thought,
times now.
I thought maybe they had just already put out the Blair Witch, they were on it. But yeah, it was the Woods. But I had not seen that trailer at all. But I knew it was one different because it looks different than the one that they posted online, which I haven't watched the Blair Witch one because I didn't really want to spoil anything.
yeah. I didn't want to go back and rewatch it because I know what it is now and I want to see it. So
I don't know. I mean, when did Blair Witch come out? 98?
no, it came out.
I feel like it was before 2000.
It was between 98 and
Yeah, it was
2000. I
before
don't have my phone handy, but
Anyway, it's almost 20 plus, almost
16
20
years, I
Yeah,
think.
16 years.
yeah, because it was big when I was in.
Oh, it was not just big; it was huge.
Yeah, because
saying big is doing it not quite the justice. I mean, it was a huge phenomenon almost.
it came out the same year, I think, as The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a movie that it came out a long time ago. They made a sequel to it.
Say it was one of those movies that's maybe 10 years ahead of its time as far as the found footage stuff. You know?
And two, so it's a movie that a lot of people hate, and I can get that.
It's significant, I think. I don't think. I don't think it's a great horror movie, but I think it's a significant.
It was a
horror movie.
significant movie in that compared to Paranormal Activity, it was which made a crap ton of money for a very little budget, but the Blair Witch was a social phenomenon because it was in the early days of the internet.
Yeah.
So
no Twitter, no Facebook.
Yeah, we had the internet. So back then, social
dial-up.
media was your GeoCities page and AOL chat rooms.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, there was a lot of
Messenger.
online, I guess, red herrings about the film being true and stuff, which I didn't dig into a lot when I was younger, but I was reading some stuff about it recently too. And apparently, even the IMDb page for all the actors said that they were missing.
Yeah.
So there was just I remember that. I just remember so much buzz about it.
Yeah.
People talking about it. I feel like. I don't know. I feel like almost like news or whatever. I feel like there was other places besides just seeing the trailer.
Well, MTV had a bunch of stuff to do with it.
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
You know,
There was people, they tried as hard as they could to push it as being a real thing until after it premiered. So if you saw the movie under the impression that it really happened, then it makes it one of the most frightening experiences of all time, probably, especially if you're younger when you saw it.
and they sold that to a lot of people.
And then after you knew that it was just a movie they made for 10 or 15 grand on DV cameras in the woods, then it's more of a the mythology behind it and some of the documentaries and special features they've made on it, I think are more actually interesting than rewatching that first film. And so this is taking that concept, putting it into the future as some type of sequel, where it seems like I didn't read too much about it. I just read that it seemed that some of the characters are trying to make documentaries, who are in film school or something, So that kind of gives them one way to get rid of all the super terrible shaky cam pointing at your face, up your nostril shots.
Yeah.
So hopefully they can.
They got made fun of for a better part of a decade.
Yeah.
Another thing too, I kind of, I was thinking about the success they had with, I guess, tricking like a lot of people that it was a real thing, and I feel like that they probably weren't like, they weren't doing the found footage just because they thought, oh, this is like the scariest way to do something. They were doing it because, they were trying to convince people, and that I think because they changed the format of the sequel, it shows like, okay, the cat's out of the bag. It's not real.
Yeah.
We can't do that again because that would just be dumb,
Yeah.
And they made a traditional sequel, which most people didn't like.
Yeah.
But it's funny that they kind of, I get the impression that they weren't confident in that subgenre that they were kind of building up, which it wasn't the first one, but that they kind of helped build up, that they like reverted to a more traditional style film, where now it's like found footage is, it's been so popular, it's starting to wean its way out now.
And to like a comment that Derek had made, and if you looked at the front page of Bloody Disgusting, they
love it.
They had like, I think Friday over the weekend, like 4 front page posts about the Blair Witch. And if you look at the Woods trailer, it had a bunch of quotes from Bloody Disgusting.
Yeah, like I'm going to reference the Arrested Development real quick. It just reminds me of this. Like one time there's a lawyer called Barry Zuckercorn, and the mom says, he's very good. So all over the city, you'll see billboards with like, Barry Zuckercorn, he's very good. And that's the only thing anybody's ever said positive about him. And during this film, everything is like, it's fantastic, Bloody Disgusting. It's a good movie, Bloody Disgusting. And it's like, I just automatically, to me, that's like red flags. If the only people you can get to say good things is one company.
Talking about the Blair Witch?
Yeah, in the woods or whatever. It's it's a huge red flag.
I've seen a lot of
and what we're going to do next? Get Twitter like, oh, Jim Bob on Twitter. This looks
I've
terrifying.
seen a lot of critics on Twitter kind of say that they were high. Another quick thing, too, to give Bloody Disgusting credit.
That's like an Adam Sandler thing, though. Hey, guys, we can't get any real critics, so let's go to Twitter.
But I think part of, like, we'll let Sean know.
Somebody pointed out on Twitter that Bloody Disgusting broke it like 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
About the Woods actually being the Blair Witch. Like they had a tip, and they said, "Hey, we're hearing information that this is actually a secret Blair Witch sequel."
Well,
and it kind of just
And two, like, to kind of give them a little bit of credit, one of the reasons that they're probably so frequently mentioned is that they produced VHS 1 and 2, which Adam Wingard was involved in and directed segments in and was in one of them. So they probably have a good rapport and relationship. So they're probably one of the outlets that got to see it first.
Yeah.
Which
I just
would
kind
lead to that.
of find it humorous just when I go back to
When
that.
your quotes are all from like one location.
Yeah, and it's all like 2 words, like, it's fantastic, mesmerizing. It's like, okay. All right.
Yeah, like if anybody ever quotes us, I think we may have been quoted on one thing, maybe.
It's like,
We'll
it was
see.
good. And it's like, yes.
Yeah,
And that's never a great sign. Not that from us, just in general, when you have like a quote from a critic or anybody, and it's like, it's good. It's like,
well, like they've hyped it up, and then like I was interested in it just hearing that it was a movie set in the woods, that because it was like a mysterious movie and they're shooting as to what it was about. So I know when we came out and I told you that news, you seem to be uninterested in it or less
it's
interested.
such a flooded genre, and it must just be a goddamn masterpiece for me to be interested in. If it comes out and it's probably going to be, they're going to really have to just reinvent it for me to watch it and be like, this is good, because they've done every single trope. I mean, I've watched World War II, Frankenstein monster zombies. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to find something new here in this found footage
like,
genre.
Just looking through the works of, like, with Adam Wingard and his writer Simon Barrett, like, they tend to go into genres and don't do the typical thing and kind of invert some of the things. So I think, filmmakers should typically go into a genre and flip things on their head or do something unexpected. I think that bodes well for a genre that is flooded there's a lot of sameness between those
it just,
movies.
like, to me, it's like, why couldn't you just have it called Into the Woods and not have it anything related with the Blair Witch
because it's 2016 and everybody has to make pre-existing properties.
Too, like the Blair Witch meant a lot to a lot of people,
but not to people that are 16 years old now. People that are going to be your main target audience, like they may not have been born yet.
Yeah, absolutely. But somebody brought up the point, like, people that were nearly the age we were, or maybe a little bit older than we were when that came out, like they may take their kids to go see this now because it's a Star Wars thing. You know what I mean? Like, for horror fans, like this was like one of the biggest successes
it was
in that
definitely
era. Like, I'm kind of excited. From the reactions I read, they were mostly all positive, and I was almost thinking, okay, well, maybe 2016, maybe this will be like one of the big surprises for me out of 2016 because I felt like this year's been a little weak for horror films, really great horror films.
It just, for me, like, I wasn't that interested to begin with. Yeah, I do like Adam Wingard a lot, but seeing that it's like, okay, it's in the woods, Now it's about the Blair Witch, or maybe not directly related to, but it's going to be a sequel to.
Well, they
it. Just
have, like,
you
they're
lost
They're
me.
looking for the sister.
Like
If you
didn't
go into
you
a lot of
didn't
the-
do me anything at all to get. If you alienated me from wanting to watch
If
this.
you
film.
go into like, I think that the Blair Witch has a lot of interesting mythology.
yes,
And the first film just hinted at it, and you saw bits and pieces when they're in the woods and they found things that scared them, and like the very end scene where they're in the basement of that house and the one guy's in the corner, and then the sequel. I think I first really watched that when it was on Sci-Fi Channel in like 2002 or 3 when we were
No,
at like the lake.
we were at the
or
lake,
something.
and our 6-year-old cousin watched it and was unfazed.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I rented the sequel because I liked the first one a lot.
I liked the original.
I didn't go to theaters to see the original
Yeah, I
Blair
didn't
Witch because
either. I was like 8.
my parents didn't really take
whatever.
me to theaters a lot. I would go with my friends, but I rented that. We just rented a lot of videos instead, and then I rented the sequel because I liked the first movie enough because I thought it was a cool thing. Like,
Yeah.
I liked the movie okay, but I just thought everything around it was so cool, and it was smart what they did with releasing that film. But
Yeah.
I think we need to revisit those in some capacity before this new one.
Yeah,
comes out.
I think the original.
It's been so
I just
long.
get kind of disappointed because, like, to me, when I look at it, it's like Blair Witch was a good standalone property. I understand you have to do a sequel because it made so much money, but to me, to wait like almost 16 years later, it's like,
everything
this
is old is new
isn't.
again.
But when I think of like,
Well, it's cool that they didn't run it into the ground and now they're doing a
Yeah.
sequel. Like, that's one of the few, like, how many horror franchises that have been that successful, or at least with the first one, and it's had a sequel that they didn't. Granted,
well, I
the
mean,
sequel
you
kinda
look at
killed it, but
look at Halloween and
I
Friday
mean,
the
well,
13th,
even the
and
more
Saw.
recent ones like Paranormal Activity.
Yeah,
how many of
Paranormal
those? I don't
Activity,
know.
yeah.
Saw, like all those films.
Well, if you look on Netflix, there's a bunch of franchises that are incredibly low budget, very poorly received franchises that get sequels.
do you guys remember the Blair Witch Project?
No.
That was on, I think, Showtime. It was their porn parody.
Yeah, but it just to me, it just when I see that, like, I didn't have a high level interest in the movie anyway by just the trailers and stuff I saw for it because it just looked like to me.
Well, it didn't give you any information.
But no, but just having been in that 18 to 20-year-old range when Paranormal Activity first came out, and the market literally flooded with found footage, and I've been watching these movies for the better part of 8 years. It's just like,
I totally
guys,
get
you
that.
gotta do something different.
And-
it does not appeal to
And
me.
for me, I think the reason why I'm like actually really excited for it is I didn't watch a lot of those because I didn't love them. Like I saw Quarantine, I saw Quarantine, and
which Quarantine was a movie I had high hopes
well, they're
for.
based on Wreck, which are people
Yeah.
really love.
I saw. I'm trying to think what I saw in theaters.
Quarantine
that
could have
were
been
found.
awesome, but
I saw Cloverfield and
Cloverfield.
a Quarantine. I did not see any Paranormal Activities.
I've seen all of them, and
I can't think of any other ones I've seen that are found footage. Like, I didn't watch anything.
When I originally
so-
got Netflix, and you was like the instant streaming was like became a thing.
Yeah.
It was like almost a ton of just really cheap, found footage.
Well, like
films.
Grave Encounters.
Yeah,
or-
Grave Encounters, which made fun of the ghost investigator
So here's
stuff.
one thing that they absolutely
We
can,
didn't make fun of it. Just put those guys.
so
in
one
there,
thing
they
they absolutely should not do in the Blair Witch, and if they do, I'm
Is
going
it
to
the
stand.
Blair Witch or is it Blair Witch?
It's
The-
the Blair Witch, because the first one was the Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch.
So I think this is indicating that's more about the Blair Witch.
They always do that with reboots. They just added "the" at the beginning
Yeah.
of it.
Or there's like
Granted, they took off Project.
Blair Witch.
the Fast and the Furious, Fast
Yeah.
and Furious.
They do it with games a lot too.
But if they have a character who unhinges their jaw and opens really wide, I'm going to be
Done.
so mad.
I will throw my Coke
I
at
hope
the screen.
I hope the person turns on the camera at the end and it's actually the Blair Witch holding the camera the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, like the movie Ouija, so the trailers for that, I forgot what the subtitle is, but it's a sequel to the Ouija film that came out a year or so ago. It's being directed by Mike Flanagan, who did Hush and Oculus and some other films. Like, it actually looks pretty good, and it seems it's set in a time period. And it
Except
actually has a few
for-
characters from Mad Men in it, because it's
Except
got
for the
January Jones and
dislodged jaw.
so it looks pretty good aside from the character dislodging and opening their jaw very wide. And it's like I'm so tired of that trope of that being something that's scary.
That's what kind of took me out of
Another thing about that too is like
It Follows.
I'm not scared of kids. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many films that kind of like hinge on the creepy kid,
Yeah.
and it's just been done too much at this point
like,
for me
yeah.
to really like entice me. I'm not saying it can't be good, but to entice me to watch it,
Yeah.
I'm like I'm totally over that right now.
Well, it's just been done.
It's one of those subgenres where people are afraid of clowns, people are afraid of scary, little kids. But for me, it doesn't do much for me.
Yeah.
So it just
Yeah.
The movie doesn't look that bad aside from those other.
It looks like a
Just
huge.
turned me off.
It looks like a huge step up in quality from the first film.
Yeah.
But the fact that they had the dislodged jaw thing, it's like, come on, I'm
The
tired
only
of seeing
time
this.
I saw it was the taking of Deborah Logan on Netflix. I'm not giving spoilers, but anybody who watches horse have probably seen the scene where like she turned into a snake creature and dislodges her jaw to try to swallow a kid. That's actually a really effective, creepy scene, but that wasn't like a. Have you seen it?
No.
It's a
But
pretty.
yeah, it's not just them standing.
Yeah,
there.
it's a pretty cool scene because it looks kind of like a snake.
Oh,
and
I've seen the
she's
still of that.
Yeah, it's like a pretty cool scene,
Yeah.
but this is not that. This is just a little kid, just stereotypical, like Ring the Grudge type.
So
Ash vs. Evil Dead season 2 trailer also Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Did you watch that, Derek?
I've seen it.
Did you not
Did
think
you
it
see
looked
the full
exciting at
trailer?
all?
Look, they got me on season 1. I paid like $100-something to watch it. Fuck them. I don't want to watch it anymore.
Separate to that, say you could watch season 2 for free.
Like,
Did the trailer look good?
The trailer looked good, but to me, as just a consumer, it's not worth paying the money for stars.
you just feel like you're gonna be
I got
tricked
burned.
again.
I got burned on the
Right?
first season,
Yeah.
so I'm
so
over
you
it.
would. So to you though, like if you take the money out of the equation,
Ted Raimi
If it was like
great in it.
if
you
it
just-
was
if you
on
just-
Fox, I would watch it.
if you didn't watch,
but-
well, it can never be on Fox.
I know.
But if you instead of watching the show live, just bought a $20 box set DVD or Blu-ray, then would you have had different feelings?
Yeah, absolutely. I would have not had investment of I had to buy the Stars package to watch one show that was very lackluster for
Well-
months. Yeah, like people were very easy on this show because of the nostalgia factor, but it wasn't that good. There was a lot of nothing that happened, and they could have condensed it into maybe like 4 episodes and been way more effective. Like 4 one-hour episodes would have been awesome, but what was it, 10, 22-minute episodes? No.
Well, the first one
You
was
got
more
me
like
one time.
the first episode was more like 45
Yeah, the first episode
minutes.
was phenomenal, and then
Yeah,
everything
Sam Raimi.
else was like in the pooper. And then the last episode, obviously, we all have
I
different
mean,
opinions, but
I liked it a whole lot. I do hope that season 2 brings a
It's like-
higher level quality in some of the
it's
directing
kind of
and
like
stuff.
I went and bought like a brand new Corvette, and I was like, awesome. And then the second day I owned it, the engine blew up, the transmission went out, and the wheels fell off. I'm like, oh, you don't have a
You
warranty.
got a little fun out of it, right?
Yeah,
I feel
I got
like-
a little fun out of it, and then the entire thing fell apart. And then like, oh well, you don't have a warranty either, so
I feel like the first season, Ash vs. Evil Dead. So you have like the first episode is directed by Sam Raimi,
Which
and
is great.
And it
Phenomenal. I watched
felt,
it like 100
felt
times.
very much like a Sam Raimi movie. Obviously, with a little bit lower budget and a little bit lower scale, just because it was one episode of a show. But you had that, and then a lot of, like I think the follow up episodes, there were some strong episodes, and then you kind of built to a finale.
I say I have to disagree. I think there's like maybe 3 strong episodes in the entire series, and that's including the first.
But I, like just
we can get in a debate for this for
Yeah,
hours.
we're
We're not
say-
going to agree.
we
We're just
were
have
past
to,
that.
Yeah,
We-
we're just
we
going to have to
did-
agree to
yeah,
disagree.
well, to say that the season 2 trailer, I think if you enjoyed season 1, it looks like season 2 is going bigger.
I would say that
It does, and I'm hopeful that
the
that's
like the
will hold
season
out.
2 trailer makes me interested in it, but I just know what I have to do to watch it, and it's just not worth it.
Well, but like the thing to me is, I think what happened with the first season is once it came out and was successful, then that lays the groundwork for them to get a
Yeah.
bigger budget
Well,
for
to me
season
too,
2.
though, like once the nostalgia factor wore off and you saw him back as Ash again, Bruce Campbell is always great, but to me, it just kind of like once that nostalgia factor wore off, it's like, what do you got for me? And there wasn't
So,
much.
real quick, did you have to pay for stars for longer than this?
Well, see, because I had
Did you have to bundle it?
I had to bundle it and
keep it?
I didn't have to keep it, but if like the bundle was like $20 a month because you can't just get stars, I had to get 2 other packages too. So it cost. I had it for. Cost me like $160.
So now though you can
get it for like $15
Yeah.
and might get it for 2 months. You
Yeah.
know?
what you can do now is you can get it as an add-on channel through Amazon
Yeah.
Prime if you have that.
Yeah.
So that's a way to get that channel much easier
That's what
without
I'm gonna
any.
do.
Yeah.
Last year I had it and watched it live, but this year I'm gonna have to do that.
You can still watch it live, I think.
Oh, awesome!
But
then,
yeah, I mean,
you
if
just-
there's easier
or maybe
outlets
can, I
to
don't know.
have access to it, that's great. But just to me, it's just like you already pay for so much, and it's like I gotta go pay more money
Yes.
to watch this.
So just to summarize that news section, so 2 out of 3 of us are excited for the Blair Witch. Derek,
2 out of 3 of us are excited for
Yeah, I'm not.
that season 2.
I'm not trying to be the pessimist here. I just.
and Derek may come around to other those properties depending on what it looks like they are.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna. I will see Into the Woods / the Blair Witch, but
Isn't it The Woods? Into the Woods is that Disney movie.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever
But,
it is. I'd probably rather watch that at this point.
so,
They have Chris Hemsworth in it.
Oh, Cabin in the Woods?
No, Into the Woods. I thought one of them had him as like the
I don't know.
huntsman or something.
No,
I
he
don't
was in
know.
The Huntsman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. That's all.
But yeah, so moving from news to what we've been watching, we'll kind of briefly touch on the show Stranger Things. which is on Netflix Watch Instant, and it's an 8-episode season of a show that is very, very heavy in the 80s nostalgia, kind of the Amblin, Spielberg type stuff, mixed with Stephen King, mixed with John Carpenter, and
I think it does it better than like most other 80s inspired stuff.
well, I've seen most people I've talked to about this, because I've had a number of people who aren't huge horror nerds or anything who have really enjoyed the show and talked about it a lot. And I think that too, like on social media, the biggest critiques I've seen of it are from people saying that it's basically all nostalgia and things you've seen before, and they're not moved by that aspect of it, and they don't like. They're like, I didn't enjoy it, but I did watch it all in a weekend. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
So
Well, they didn't hate it then. I guess.
and the score for it was done by the guys behind the band Survive, who did a couple of tracks for the guest soundtrack. So the soundtrack is very much in that
awesome.
80s, Goblin, John Carpenter, Tangerine Dream type milieu, and that was very evocative of that. And it stars Winona Ryder and then a bunch of other people. So I really enjoyed it. I watched the entire show in a weekend last weekend.
I loved it as well, and I never watched things that quickly, and I watched it, from like Friday to Monday. My wife really liked it too. She was maybe hoping for a little bit more as far as kind of, I don't want to say resolution, because it kind of it resolved enough for me and her, but she was maybe hoping for something more significant and kind of maybe some discoveries that like even the viewers would find out. Towards the end, but she still liked it, and I did too. And I thought every episode was good, like actually almost really good every episode. But for some reason, I still think that first episode maybe did the most for me. Like I think I still loved that first episode the most. It was just so expertly handled, I think, and it kind of did an awesome job of doing so many things at once.
They have stated the intentions to make more seasons and to have it be sequelized to the season that already occurred. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, but the intention is that there will be more seasons of this show. And I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the visuals of it I thought were pretty good. With any of these shows that have special effects work on not a huge budget, quality can vary. I know, Derek, you haven't watched this, right?
No, because BoJack came out, so I didn't.
Yeah. So the thing I would say that compare and contrast this to what you said about Ash versus Evil Dead. I think
I
too,
do want to watch it too.
When you have a show like this that comes out there's 8 episodes that are 1 hour that you can consume in a few days. I think that can leave you with an overall more positive opinion of it, because this played out
because you're not dragging out.
I'm
over
also
2
say
months
too,
or whatever.
Netflix knows what they're doing. Like, there's not been many Netflix original series that have just been trash. Like, I'm gonna kind of compare them to the MCU real fast, because they know what they're doing.
What was it?
They get these shows. They don't.
Hemlock Grove was not good.
Well, yeah, they're gonna have some
3 seasons because people watched it.
It was obviously good to someone, but Netflix is kind of like a machine. They can get this stuff, they get the right people, and they know to give you a little bit, but not too much. And I think doing stuff that...
Well, too, Netflix doesn't have a board of people that... like standards and practices that say, well, no, this is off limits, this is off limits.
But Netflix
is
they're able to kind of let their creators go.
But they got the hot hand right now. They seem like they know what they're doing.
Well, they put together a studio that rivals AMC and HBO in cranking out stuff.
Another thing too, like there's about this show, like again, I don't think it's a perfect show. Do I think it's like it's heads above most everything else I've watched on TV in a long time? But at the same time, the thing that I think holds it together for me is there's nothing else like this anywhere.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing it takes from a lot of stuff, absolutely, but there's nothing else putting that stuff together in that same way, and you can't get that type of experience from any other show. And that's what makes it great to me. It doesn't feel like just another cop show or another, American Horror Story ripoff or something like that. Like it's its own thing, even though it borrows from so many things.
So it's kind of refreshing in a way.
It really is. Yeah, you're not going to get this anywhere else or any show even close to this. Really,
So, just looking at the movie, the things that it overtly references. So there are overt references to The Thing, The Evil Dead. They've even name checked Stephen King.
Plenty of horror posters.
There's music from the early 80s era, And
Great, yeah, it's a great soundtrack. Not just the score, some of the songs they use in it.
So to me, like the main thing that I would take away, if you really love like Amblin stuff, so like E.T. and stuff like the Goonies or stuff where there's like kids, this has that element, and the kid actors are all really great in this. They're all great, but it actually goes further into the horror side than any of those movies ever did, and has more violence and stuff, and gore and things like that. So it was well shot. I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to a second season. The only problem with these Netflix shows, when they drop all the episodes at once, you watch them all in 1 week, and you're like, well, damn, now it's another year until I see anything,
That's
as
what happened
opposed
with-
to...
I watched BoJack.
And for me, watching this too, the title "Stranger Things." Granted, there's that leaves room for a lot of different things to happen instead of maybe just one. I guess there's a certain place or people that are responsible to like all the weird things that are happening. So that kind of leaves you to think Stranger Things. Maybe there's like other things in the world that are kind of...
Yeah, I think they leave it open to kind of go into that at some point.
But also too, I was almost hoping that it was an anthology show, because I mean that sounds like an anthology, like almost a comic book you would buy, Stranger Things, and like each episode, each issue would be something totally different. And I love the characters, I love the world, and I love the setting. Like, I feel like if they would have
small town Indiana,
if they in the 80s, if they do change it, would they have kept it in the 80s? Like, would it feel like a stretch? You know what I mean? So I think the right decision probably is to stick with this storyline, because
I think based on the things they did, it's opened up to they can go into different areas and cover different things. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend, if you enjoy the general type of stuff that we all enjoy, then it's probably worth your time to check out if you haven't already. I think the first episode's a good barometer as to whether or not, if you feel compelled to watch the next episode after the first episode, then you'll probably end up watching the entire series in less than a week. But yeah, something that I really enjoyed and would recommend checking out. I kind of need to rewatch it again to digest it, because like I said, when you power through it in like a few days, it's kind of hard to separate out exactly what worked and what didn't. But this is more like an 8-hour movie than a TV series. So I highly recommend checking that out.
what else do you watch? Anything else relevant?
Not really. I have been I've been trying to keep up with Scream, the MTV Scream.
Give it up. Just give it up. Just throw it away. Don't watch it anymore. You've never seen anything good about
It's
it.
just-
I think it's time to wash your hands of it and walk off.
I hear nobody talking about that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think the ratings have been on the decline. It's just,
Wash your
they're
hands,
doing nothing.
walk off.
Like the show Slasher felt, at least somewhat fresh, as opposed to Scream just feels very same. All these mysteries that I don't care about, and these characters aren't very compelling, and it feels like at this point they're too connected to the main core, like 3 characters, to let any of them die, which Scream the movie series suffered from after the second film when they killed Randy. Beyond that, they then felt like all those characters are invincible and couldn't die, to the point of being almost ridiculous in Scream 4. But yeah, that was pretty much all the stuff I watched. I have been keeping up with Preacher, the AMC show, which has actually gotten very interesting in the past few episodes.
Yeah, I was meaning to watch that.
And they've announced that it's getting a second season, so it may be a show that works better for a lot of people if you haven't watched it at all, just to wait till the season's done and on Netflix and watch it all, like in a binge. And I've read too, like I didn't read the comics, but if you did read the comics, apparently it's more of a prequel to the comics than like what happened. So I think it's pissed some people off, but we'll see. But I'm enjoying that. So that's one too, though. Like I said, if you haven't gotten to it yet, it might be better just to wait for it to hit Netflix and watch it all in a binge, like we just talked about watching Stranger Things. But anybody else watch anything before we get into Lights Out?
I watched season 3 of BoJack. It's amazing. Watch it. That's all I watched.
Okay. Last time I forgot to mention that I watched that De Palma documentary. That was awesome. Goes into his history. It's basically him sitting in front of a fireplace talking for the entire movie. And it's very stripped down, but because of that, like you just, you feel like you're sitting there and just, hearing all these great stories. 70s like him and like Scorsese and Spielberg and all them, kind of that brat pack of filmmakers during that era and stuff, and how they were able to really experiment and do some different types of films. And, the studios would spend money on them doing this, but also about how much he fought the studios and the censors and stuff, because he did a lot of, he didn't do like necessarily straight horror, but his were very much in that same wheelhouse of thriller horror. I mean, of course he did Carrie and stuff too, but But yeah, there's just some great stories in that. Highly recommend that if you're a De Palma fan. It does spoil a couple of his films and some of his better ones. So I would recommend at least maybe checking out some of his, I guess, more critically acclaimed films before going into that, so they don't get spoiled. But a lot of them they kind of touch on and don't really spoil much at all. Not related. I just want to give props to Swiss Army Man. That movie was really funny, awesome.
I've heard great things.
People were
about it.
laughing all throughout the theater. They walked out laughing, into the parking lot was still laughing. Somebody made the point that it's almost like a Spike Jonze film, in that it's very fantastical. You know what I mean? Something like Being John Malkovich, where it's just kind of, you know what I mean? Like you got to suspend reality because that's the fun of it. But at the same time, it doesn't maybe have the same heart or thematic. But it has a lot of heart. It doesn't have maybe the same thematic weights as some of those films do. But it's super enjoyable experience and hilarious. And then Dead of Summer, episode 3, the reason I didn't talk about it last week, episode 3 didn't record right on that PlayStation View, so I'm not able to watch it. So I just haven't kept up with it because I wanted to watch that, and I don't really know the best way to watch that episode.
You can watch the Freeform app on your iOS device or on a PC, but it does not Chromecast. So
yeah, maybe I'll do that to get through episode 3 and then kind of catch up because I'm still recording those shows. I like that. That's another show that does the 80s. It doesn't sell you on it completely. It's just kind of like, oh, cool, this is the 80s. But, you know, it doesn't.
I have to say, it probably has a smaller budget than Stranger Things.
Yeah, and it shows. Like, it feels very much like...
Well, Freeform is ABC Family now, renamed, rebranded.
Yeah,
so.
just turning it on, you don't get the feel of the 80s. You just get the visual cues like, oh, they're kind of... This person's dressed this way. They're, you know, using a Walkman or whatever. It's not necessarily the feel of it. Something like Stranger Things is able to pull off. But that was it for me.
All right, so now we'll move into a review of Lights Out, and we'll go spoiler free and then go into spoilers after the end, let you know we're getting into spoilers. So we're recording this on Monday, July 25th, and it has the box office numbers are out for the weekend. It made $21 million or so. So, you know, based on a budget of like $4.5 million, so it already has made its money back. And it's on its way to being pretty profitable. It will not be as profitable as The Conjuring or Conjuring 2, but it's still likely to crack, you know, the 50 million barrier and get over that hump, which for horror that's, you know, shot for less than 10 million is usually a pretty good barometer of success. It's likely going to make more money than the last Halloween or Friday the 13th film, at least domestically. Worldwide, it might not because it doesn't have their name recognition. But if you've seen any of the trailers for this movie or know anything about it, it was a full-length adaptation of a short film that the director, David F. Sandberg, made a few years back for a contest, which, coincidentally, he did not win with that short. He entered into a contest, and it's what, like, when you flip the light switch off and the lights are off, then there's a creature or a person standing in the shadow, in the dark. You turn the light on, and they're gone. That's the basic concept, and that short went viral and got him a lot of attention, and then James Wan produced, making this into a full-length movie. So I guess the moral of that story is you don't have to win all these different film contests to be the one who actually comes out the winner, because he directed this film and he's working on Annabelle 2. So it seems like with Ouija and Annabelle, for the sequels, they tried to get up-and-coming filmmakers to improve them, at least they care about these franchises some. I mean, the first Annabelle made a lot of money, so they saw it as a success, and people did enjoy it. But
well, it's great to see... And this is all Blumhouse. It's great to see them trying to foster talent, and not just find a music video director and throw them on there.
Well, was this Blumhouse? Because it was released by Warner Brothers. James Wan produced it.
Yeah, you're right. I was just thinking James Wan because, you know, Blumhouse.
Well, all from that talent pool of people that worked with them.
I guess the best thing I said with this movie is it's awesome that they gave a guy a chance to direct a feature film based off of a short film he made. I think it's wonderful that they did something like that, because I mean it's really, because that's like everybody's dream. You know, you make these short films and you love to do it, but
is that your review?
That's my review.
Okay. Okay, but before a lot of the reviews came out, the buzz was pretty high on it.
It has a 78% of Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, and it's still pretty high.
Yeah.
It still got overwhelmingly positive reviews. It did well at the box office. A lot of critics have said, you know, that it's not a modern horror classic or masterpiece, but at the top of the heap when it comes to modern horror.
Well, let me say this: if you threw this into the mix in 2006 with The Grudge and whenever The Ring was popular, it fits right in with those films. It is not any better and it's not any worse.
So
it is on par.
So Drew just kind of mentioned. So we saw this. So Derek and I saw this at the same time. We saw it at a theater at Friday night at 10 o'clock
with a fairly young audience, and it almost elicited no reaction the entire.
What about the end of the? What about the last act of the film?
So what's funny though,
my theater was like people. There were some people talking throughout a lot of it, and the last act of it, people were like making all kinds of noise, screaming. They were really into the end of it, and I think that was the strongest point for me.
People did.
I actually had to completely disagree and think it was the weakest.
I'll
get into that. We had to wait till we spoilers.
People did elicit some reaction. And then after the film, though, here's what's funny: after the movie ended, people clapped.
Which I have not seen in a long. I haven't seen in like Civil War and all these other movies. I haven't seen.
And then after the movie, I used the restroom before I left, and there was a couple of younger guys in there who were teens, like 16, 17. And they're like, "Man, I need a new pair of underpants.
Yeah.
I need some new shorts."
It went over very well for these 16, 17-year-olds, but it's kind of like, yo, dude, I've seen this movie like 500 different times and just different properties.
Well, okay, so the thing about the trailer too, it gives away a lot of the good scares in it. Like, or at least the set pieces. Like every set piece that's in the trailer, that's pretty much the only moments of horror in this film, or any tense moments.
Yeah.
They
stretched a 20-minute concept. Like if they put this into VHS or some other horror anthology, and you had 20 or 30 minutes,
that was a good segment.
That would have been a phenomenal segment. But you stretched an already thin idea into over an hour, and it's like
the short, and it's still.
And
only
then you gave me Avril Lavigne looking girl.
I liked her.
Oh no, I liked her, but this is not 2006.
Oh,
this is
her
2000.
style.
Yeah.
So I was gonna.
This is not 2006.
What was that poster she had?
Avenged Sevenfold. They haven't been popular in like 6 years. So
the thing that I'll say, like, just kind of
dated
to get into this. So, I thought that the performance from Teresa Palmer was great, and the performance from I've already forgotten the name of the kid, but the kid actor was really good.
He looked a lot like Tom Jane. It messed me up. Like I kept like this kid.
I'm Tom Jane.
Yeah, it's like
the thing we mentioned before, thing we mentioned earlier about like ghost kids and all this stuff.
No ghost
like this
kids.
is just a normal kid who's pretty well adjusted and pretty smart.
Yeah,
and things happen around him, but he's not the focus. So I think that's something they did to their credit was they didn't make it scary ghost kid blah blah blah. So I thought that the performances were strong, and Maria Bello is like the mother. I thought that she did a good job.
I thought it looked good, and there were some good set pieces in here.
Because comparing this to something like we mentioned earlier, like Hush, like this movie
wasn't
the concept. The concept in this movie is about darkness and light. And luckily, this movie was not just very dark and dimly lit the entire time. They actually had a little bit of interesting lighting design. Like I thought Hush was a little bit too dark throughout most of the movie.
Well, they're just trying to lull you to sleep.
But
honestly,
they fall asleep.
Honestly, I had my head on my wife's shoulder through like the middle of this, and I was thinking, okay, I was interested in this based on the buzz. Definitely have to see it for the podcast, but I was like, I wish I was in there watching Star Trek right now instead.
Yeah, I would have rather seen Star Trek.
Yeah, me too.
But
so there's your review.
To Derek's point, they did something that was very like the characterization of like the main characters, like Teresa Palmer's character is like this hard rock chick,
and Avril Lavigne,
but
circa 2000.
But the thing they did that was interesting with that, and
not
in a good way, was like Derek said, that it was very much like those characters would have been in like 2002 or something. Like
it would have fit right in.
In current era world, I don't think somebody who's into that type of music is still like, no tattoos, no piercings, blonde hair.
Also, given the people that I know they're into that stuff, they would have been really excited that someone was trying to murder them. Like, they were awesome ghost.
Like,
and these people are like, oh no.
I guess Avenged Sevenfold is popular.
Yeah, they still have a big following. But to me, it's just like when I see that, and you're selling, like, this is someone who, when they wrote these characters, like, I don't know how to write characters. I'm going to just go with what I know.
It felt like I think they got good performances out of everybody and gave people decent character arcs.
Yeah,
but I think what they did was they kind of cloaked them in generic white person rock stuff.
Generic, very generic. And the worst scene in the entire movie was when the dude and her, I guess, had just had, as you say, coitus. they're like laying on the bed, and he has this terrible Fred Durst Creed necklace on, and it's like, what are we doing?
Can you take
it's like
me
it was the
They
big
should have actually made this a
generic-
throwback film and said it was set in 2002.
And then I would have believed
Yeah,
it.
then you'd be like, okay, cool. This
because
is like,
he's like, you Creed liking mother.
was
Yeah,
trying
it's
to-
just like why?
So like when
Who
you
does
talked
this?
when we talked before about like directors and reason you're interested in stuff. So I think that The Guest with Micah Monroe's character did a much better current like girl who's into rock music in the present
But
day.
with The Guest, that could have been set in any like time period,
I just
and
feel
it
like
would have worked.
the
'cause
costume design for this movie was distracting to me.
it was like, all right, guys, last time I dressed,
the guy was the worst offender. I
Yeah.
think. His outfit. Yeah,
like I hate that we're critiquing this,
yeah.
but just as someone in
It pulls you
2016,
out of
it pulls
it.
me out of it. And
it's like Eddie Vedder is
yeah.
in this movie.
You know, like
with-
Eddie Vedder that used to hang out with Fred Durst, but kind of likes,
let's-
you
so
know,
Eddie-
early 2000s Metallica.
It's not. It wasn't new metal. It was just
they just picked-
modern day hard festival rock.
I don't even know if it was that. I mean,
it's the guy that was playing drums on the Ghostbusters movie at the rock concert.
Yeah, it's like they took those. No, just that band. That was these people, and just that was as stupid as it sounds. Like you have things that either sell you on a movie or don't. And I watched this and immediately like, all right, I'm out.
The design, a lot of that stuff to me just fell flat
Okay.
because it
Yeah.
felt
And-
unauthentic.
And okay, so I think it opens pretty well.
Yeah,
The
it
thing
opens-
is about the short film, granted, it got him this, but because you saw the short film, it kind of gave away the big gimmick.
Also,
I think if they would have shown it in a trailer and you've not seen that short film, it would have been a little more interesting.
They also kind of, I know like It Follows wasn't a completely original beginning because it pulled from a lot of other movies, but when I watched the beginning, I was like, oh, this is definitely from It Follows. Like, because
I guess
you're getting
so,
chased
yeah.
by something you don't know what it is, then next scene, horribly disfigured human. Oh, okay, It Follows.
So I think it opens all
alert.
right. It kind of sets you up like, okay, cool. And then it kind of lulls you through the film. They explain this creature. They explain kind of the backstory, which I think they give away in the trailer a little bit.
backstory.
And really, you know, I kind of like that it was more interesting. There was a more interesting relationship between the character and let's just say some of the family than your typical horror villain or whatever. But at the same time, it was just a lot of time was spent revealing that stuff and talking about
Well,
it, that it didn't help build any of the
it had
horror.
a
And that's what it is
very-
about the movie. It's the horror. And
it had a very convenient exposition dump box they found.
yeah,
in the
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
I hate to wait to spoilers, and like I said, I feel like once we get to spoilers, we can almost shred this movie to pieces.
Well, I didn't like the ending too, the way it ended.
No.
Some people did, and I think it was, you know, they were an attempt to be bold, but I did not
was-
like it.
at
And
no
I'll kind of
point
go
in-
into that in
But the thing I
spoilers.
liked, the thing I liked about, like without getting into spoilers, the thing I liked about the ending is that based on the mythology they set up throughout the movie, like once again, these movies, it doesn't make a whole ton of sense, but the thing they set up, the ending to me made more sense than like the thing with like the Ring and the Grudge and all this stuff is like you can't do anything about it and it just happens to you and you think you've solved it but you didn't, and then there's like a girl that comes out of a TV screen or something.
I guarantee
like,
you this is getting a sequel. So they
I
end it.
have a yeah, and I can see where they go that, but I have more of a problem with kind of maybe a message it sends
well,
than
yeah,
anything. Like I
we'll save for
appreciate, I appreciate the what it did and kind of being bold and stuff.
This is
I like that part
This
of it.
ending is the
But-
opposite of the Babadook, in a sense. Because
yeah.
the Babadook is very much about taking on your personal
Oh,
inner
wait.
demons.
Yeah, I was-
and this is the completely opposite.
Forget
of
what
that.
I said about having an interesting relationship because I didn't think about that. But it's
Yeah,
kind of the
I
same
don't
thing
love
with
the Babadook, but what these two movies took on is kind of a similar thing, and the Babadook did it better.
Yeah.
So
Well,
and we didn't even all love that film.
yeah, and the creature in Babadook was more interesting. I want to really get spoilers because I
and
want to talk about the creature.
Here's another thing, though. I do appreciate. So they came up with the concept of the lights coming on and off. I thought they did some cool stuff with that, especially the end sequences.
Yeah.
I thought they did some cool things with it, and there were some moments where like there would be a last second of light turning on, and the audience was cheering in my theater. Like people were really into this when I saw it. And there were people talking all throughout it. Like there was one point when kind of somebody wakes up and they're alone and it's nearly dark. I hear this woman. It was obviously it was a black lady and she was like really into it the whole time. I heard her go, "Oh no, Martin!" You know, like she was yelling throughout it, and it was great. Like that helped me enjoy the movie. But even still, there were so many moments.
So
of
like,
lulls
what
throughout.
was your general like thoughts? Like, what would be your review on this movie?
So, like, if I had to break this down, so I think that if you have family that or friends or teens that that aren't horror aficionados, like I think a lot of people who follow our stuff or who are hardcore horror fans that watch a bunch of horror all the time, there's really not much that's new here, and I think that they may be like, oh, that was enjoyable, but I think that's the most you'll kind of get out of like a horror fan. I think for a general audience of people that don't watch horror all the time,
it hit all the right
then
notes.
I think that it hit the right notes and gave them, it's a relatively brisk running time at under an hour and a half, which thank God, because I hate going into movies that last for 2 hours when there's no reason. So I think this is a little bit more compact movie than The Conjuring 2.
Way more compact.
It's more compact, and I mean, it really only takes place in like 3 locations, mostly in 2.
Yeah.
So it takes place mostly in 2 locations, which is kind of indicative of the fact the budget was under $5 million. But I thought that it looked good. It had good performances. It has some good effective moments of scares. Overall, for PG-13 horror, I think this would be enjoyable. Like I said, for a lot of people that aren't huge horror fans, but I still would prefer something like It Follows or something of that ilk to this. I think, the biggest comparison I can think of to this in terms of how much money it's going to make and the budget and, all that stuff is probably Insidious. And because they're both PG-13 horror, both, had these kind of concepts that at the time were interesting and, had a hook to them. I think I enjoyed Insidious more than this.
Insidious 3 like blows this out of the water.
Yeah.
And so I think that this was,
no comparison.
I enjoyed this. I didn't hate it, but I watched
hate it either. But
the
I was
fact that
bored
I'm
too,
sitting, the
more
fact
than
that
I should have been.
I'm sitting here a few days later and I can't remember any of the main characters' actual names from the movie. Just the the
generic
actors.
white girl that likes rock music. Generic
Like I think
boyfriend that also likes rock music. Tom Jane's son.
Teresa Palmer's character had the most interesting character
was no
arc of the
arc.
movie. Yeah, it was. Like
It was
we'll get into
I'm
spoilers.
punk rock
they
daughter
also
that
kind
hates
of-
my family.
I feel like they set up a situation too with this is like minor spoilers with a child protection services,
Yeah,
and that goes
it goes
nowhere.
nowhere.
Really.
Yeah, it goes
It's like
nowhere.
okay, she comes in. They even introduce this character. They have this character in a couple scenes.
They could have left that out completely.
Yeah.
like
it
yeah,
was
that was so
unnecessary.
yeah. I just thought that was very very
So if I
poorly
had to,
handled.
so if I had to rate this like on a scale of like,
Why didn't she come in
one-
and try to take the kid and then
Get
the monster
half.
come like
Yeah.
that? Like do something.
Like, I'm out.
If I had to rate this like on 1 to 10, like if I had to rate this from 1 to 10, I give it like a 6.5.
Yeah, I was saying 6.
If I had to rate this on 1 to 10, I would give it a 4 out of 10. Because now, that might sound harsh, but you gotta remember, in my high school years, and like a little bit before that, was like I had The Ring and The Grudge, and The
Yeah.
Ring 2 and The Grudge 5 and The Grudge 6 and all these
Just
other
these-
movies.
these spooky
and
paranormal
this is
films.
nothing new. It took every bit of all the tropes from those movies, and it gave me nothing memorable. Like, when I judge a horror movie, I want to come out of it and have some type of creepy factor. Like, oh, I have a dark basement. I don't want to go in my dark basement tonight. It was like, The one thing that this movie did not do effectively is the fact that I hate when horror movies do this. Quit doing this. Don't do this. Do not attribute one thing to a specific family or a specific person.
Yeah, that's what.
Because then it takes you out of it. Because
you're like, oh, I'm not. There's no threat for me.
If I'm not John Higgins the second, I ain't got to worry
Well, it's
about
like the
nothing.
problem that I had with like the Paranormal Activity sequels. Is it went from more of like this
Oh, this
thing
could be
occurring
anybody.
to being like a very specific,
Yeah.
almost conspiracy family
Yeah.
type story,
And
which
just-
all movies
yeah.
do now.
And it's just like, please, for the love of God, quit attributing one spectral
Yeah.
to one person, because then you
That's why It
alienate
Follows. It was so easy to-
That's
for
why
that
It
to
Follows
spread.
did it so effective, because it was like, this can happen to
But to be
anybody.
fair,
and
a
you
lot of
might argue
people-
with like The Grudge and The Ring, but still, those are not attributed to one family. It was just attributed to a house or a tape that anyone could get involved with. And with this, I watched it. It was very lackluster. You know, I got bored during it.
Yeah, I did
And,
too. I was
like,
really bored through some of that.
The character design was cool in the shadows toward the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They completely ruined it, and then they didn't even follow their own set of rules that had been kind of set up. You had this like all destructive creature that it was like, and that was
Well,
how it became at the end. And it's like, what happened?
Yeah, like they kind of.
It fell apart.
Okay, I'll go into kind of what I think what they did with the rules at the end, and I think maybe they are justified in some of the things, but
They just didn't
they
want to
set
kill
up
the
to
main
be able
character.
to battle it a certain way, and then it kind of doesn't go anywhere. I'll give my thoughts real quick, and then we'll go into spoilers. So, watching this too, I was like, okay, a lot of us don't get scared much in movies at all.
No.
I saw somebody say, "Oh, this is what Jaws did for water. This is going to do for the dark."
No.
I'm like, no, not at all. But also, I'm not scared of the dark. You know what I mean? Like
And you're not 16 on a date.
Yeah. So your mileage may vary, but also too, it's like, is my enjoyment of horror films more about kind of atmosphere,
atmosphere,
and
tone,
mood, and tone, and kind of any thematic elements to it, or interesting twist, because a lot of these films that are just straight scares do nothing for me anymore. I mean, they did a little bit for me when I was like in elementary school, but that's just not my type of film. So for me, doesn't do much for me. And I just, I really I like the end segment as a standalone thing. And I like the audience. Like the audience had a lot of fun with it, and I enjoyed that. And I was laughing a lot through the end of it. But so many things that go, and I think this director can go far too. He did some really great stuff in this. Not a phenomenal film at all, but at the same time, aside from a few elements, it's not like this was like a horrible film by any stretch of the imagination.
No,
compared to most horror films that
it
come
was
out.
just, to me, like I said, having grown up in that time period with movies like these were a dime a dozen, and I've watched so many of them. It wasn't impactful.
If it didn't have that somewhat original hook, then it would have been really lame.
It was an enjoyable kind of PG-13 horror film that had a good cast for the most part, and it had some effectively directed sequences. It's just the overall story. It didn't, to me. Like we've discussed this afterwards, like, you can tell the budget limitations. Like if they had built the mythology up a little bit differently and staged the final sequence at somewhere other than just like this house. Yeah. Because it also falls trapped to the suburban house that you can traverse with 3 people and it takes 20 minutes to search the entire house.
Yeah, so many horror films are just set in the house, and it's...
Like if they had found a little bit more interesting location, kind of like the beginning location, it's in all the trailers is like a warehouse.
But there's
that was more interesting.
Like you said, there's so many cool things they could have done. But if y'all are ready, I kind of get into spoilers because there's definitely some things I want to talk about.
And by the way, Hazard teaser trailer.
Yeah, I was gonna say
William directed is on Facebook, YouTube,
it's
Twitter.
on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Vimeo. It's not on Vine because it's not 6 seconds. But so if you enjoy the work we're doing, you can go and give us a review in iTunes. That'll help out quite a bit. You can find all the work we're doing at housebythevideostore.com. That's where you can also find the teaser trailer for Hazard. It's only about 23 seconds, I think, so it doesn't really spoil much from the film, just gives you an idea of what we shot. We're actually going to be doing some reshoots later today and hopefully getting this thing wrapped up soon, but you can find the teaser trailer there. If you're enjoying the work we're doing, you would do us a huge favor, go to our Patreon, which is at patreon.com/HBTVS. And that helps us pay for general site maintenance, and as we're working towards doing more original contents and things like that. And you can, like I said, you can find all the links to all of our social media accounts on housebyvideostore.com, Facebook, Vine, Vimeo, Twitter, YouTube, Vimeo, everything's there. And then Facebook's where we've been trying to post everything now, just because of the way they prioritize links to things. But so it's recommended you follow us there if you want to see all the stuff we're doing. But beyond that, you can find all of us on the internet. Specifically, you can find me on Twitter at Will_Droid.
You can find me on almost everything at MetaWorldDerek.
I'm on Twitter at BlevensSean.
Yeah, so now we're getting into spoilers for Lights Out. And basically...
Character design. What did you think about the reveal? Do you think it was a huge mistake?
Wait, tell me what do you mean the reveal? Like showing the hands and stuff?
No, because they showed her face. And
what does her face look like? I
kind of... very generic, grungish, like The Grudge type, like distorted face.
Because they show up for a minute.
Black lights.
Yeah, I kind of remember that. Yeah. Did they show the mask from the short in there when she's going through the bin in the basement? I'm pretty sure remember
one of them.
Remember in the short?
Well, and the lady at the beginning who was like the worker in the warehouse with the stepdad.
She was in it.
She was the director's wife who was in the short film.
But to me, it's like with this movie, your strongest force was not knowing what it looked like. That's what made it scary.
I think that obscuring it more and not giving you a direct view of it.
And then like you go in the basement and you get the black light out and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Now there's all these, distorted, destroyed mannequins that have all their eyes and mouths ripped off.
So
I saw real quick. I was in Kmart, the one that's closing down, and they had a ton of mannequins. I meant to send you all the picture. I almost sent you the picture of this like a month ago and said, "Who wants to make a generic horror film with scary mannequins?"
Lights Out too. Yeah, but Ghostbusters was at least enjoyable.
But that was a funny concept. On that,
a thing that with this movie, it's basically about mental illness. like when you boil it down to what the
Yeah.
underlying message is, and then I don't really know what the message you take away from it is. So instead of fighting your inner demons and succeeding, you kill yourself.
That's the
Yeah.
problem I have with it. The ending was bold, so she kills herself, and that makes
mother
sense.
does.
Yeah, that makes sense. It gets rid of it, but at the same time, it's like, man, that's kind of a weird message
Yeah.
to show people who may have issues enough that
Yeah.
may watch this and may be influenced.
Yeah.
Like somebody that may have problems.
Oh,
It's better. Take a film a certain way
if I
than-
just kill
than-
myself, it's going to make
so
me.
Yeah,
so
like-
you have
like,
you have inner
My
demons.
whole
that-
family would be better off if I kill myself.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was.
That's exactly
yeah,
what it isn't
and
kind of.
that was my problem with it. For
you have
sure.
you have inner demons you experience as a child that follow you around for the rest of your life, and the easiest solution is to kill yourself.
Yeah,
All right,
it's going to save
so
your whole family.
this is where I'm comparing the ending to Babadook.
Very,
Yeah.
very. I get that it's like, ooh, kind of more of a shocking ending than a lot of like films that kind of puss out.
But it wasn't
at least-
shocking because you never
But it's
knew
also
about the
the
mom
mo-
enough to care.
You never
And two,
cared
it's
about
almost
her.
the most obvious ending. Like
Yeah.
you kind of thought that from the beginning. Like, well, if she dies and they go away, it's almost the most obvious. But at the same time, yeah, I did not like the ending because of that aspect.
Well, and like I said, that's why, just real quick about the Babadook, it was like the opposite of that. Because the Babadook was like confronting your inner demons
And
facing
learning to
them,
live with it, yeah.
learning to live with them. Where this was the very much the opposite. One of the biggest issues I have with this movie is a lot of times things are over-explained. So she goes into her mom's house
And gets the exposition
There's a
box.
convenient box of
because like
everything.
instead of going to a mental institute that had been closed down for 20 years, and magically there's
That's probably budgetary reasons.
Yeah,
to
but I'm
not
saying,
have to
but how
have
many
other
movies have you
locations.
seen where like I'm gonna go into this abandoned medical center and all the records are gonna be there? No, this time the mom kept them. Not only
No, the
did she-
dad
the
had
dad
him because he
had
was
them.
because
stepdad.
I thought too. I'm like, why would the mom have her own medical?
Well,
records?
that's still to me just kind
So,
of like
so let's just. I don't. We didn't really talk about
anyway,
the plot, but
the plot is mom has a friend that's emo. Emo kid cannot be in sun. The treatment that the doctors pick for the girl is to incinerate her with light. It just poof gone.
She
Black
spontaneously
smoldering
combusts.
smoke on thing. Evil follows her, kills people that try to make her not depressed.
so then, as she gets depressed and gets
of her
agitated
medicine.
and gets off her medicine, then it puts her in a bad mental state where Diana, who's like her childhood friend that was killed, can come into the real world, and it's revealed that she killed Teresa Palmer's character's dad. He didn't run away. So then, like, she has commitment issues because she thinks her father left her and ran away when she was younger. And then that's where it says she has a bit of an arc because she actually works
that's a
through
cool.
that.
That was a cool aspect to it.
So
for sure.
and then
but it's just muddled out by so
Yeah.
much other
with her
stuff.
generic rock boyfriend. But the movie overall, like I said, the ending of it, like they did something different because usually the way the movies would have ended is the mom comes to some self-realization and the ghost or the thing goes away, but then at the end it comes back, surprise. So at least they did something different. I don't know how you do a sequel based
you
on
do
that
it
ending.
because I guess Diane's something separate. I don't know. I thought maybe the kid or the daughter, is mentally traumatized by it, and that's how
Yeah,
it
how it comes
transfers on.
back.
That's kind of the
Or
logical.
one thing it could have been that you could have went is like very much Shaun of the Dead and is just like cleaned your house and you just lived with it at nighttime. It did all the cooking and cleaning,
Or
or just
you
something
just-
goofy.
So
Instead
they
of
almost,
smoking
and too in the
yourself.
basement, they almost set up the fact that it can be hurt. So you
Yeah.
thought they were going to figure out a way to hurt it or battle it
Yeah.
instead of that too, and I think it was a situation of when it grabbed on because it was touching somebody, that's when it was vulnerable if light was shown on it because
Yeah.
it couldn't just disappear on
Yeah.
that. So I thought, they can kind of do something cool. Even if the mom would have sacrificed herself, maybe if she would have grabbed it and you know what I mean? I don't know. If they would have figured out a way for the mom to sacrifice herself
Vampired it,
other
ran
than
to the
shooting
light.
herself in the head with a gun.
Yeah.
Well, and two, like something that in our audience, that third act, when the lights go out at the house, like the power goes out, there was like an audible reaction from the audience, like, "Oh no!"
But then again, okay, here's another problem with the film. The daughter, whatever her name is, generic white girl rocker, is very dedicated to her brother. The lights are out, which is instant
And then
death.
she leaves
with the brother, and it's like okay. And then not only
That's when the audience said, "Oh no,
Yeah.
Martin!" When he woke up.
and then
So Martin, I forgot
and
his
then
name.
Yeah.
you go.
I only
in-
know that because the lady yelled it in the
And then
theater.
like you walk in there, and your boyfriend is gone. He's not in the house. You don't know where he's at. So it's like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to go back and get my little brother and get out of the house. I'm not going to try to find
Yeah.
him. I'm going to go in the basement. okay, they're just so.
I thought that the end sequence, there was some interesting things. Like I thought they did some cool
and then-
setups and sequences, especially the boyfriend leaving when he's getting thrown.
I enjoyed when he got picked up
and he turns on
that was like the best.
the car
scene in
lights. Like
movie.
everybody in the theater cheered when he did that.
Yeah.
Like that was.
But
Like,
yeah, that was
awesome.
Yeah. That was a fun because I thought he was about to get banged.
That was a fun inversion of like.
because it caught you off guard, but it made sense. You know what I mean? Like
it's
okay,
realistically, someone would do that.
Yeah.
And then he just like hits the ground. And you hear him get in the car and drive off. Like, he'll never leave.
Yeah, so basically, just to reiterate, since we don't really talk about the plot, basically the plot is
I already told the plot.
Yeah.
Dead
But
ghost kills people. That's all you need to know.
whenever anybody, so the Maria Bella's character, whenever her current husband or her prior husband tried to look into Diana and get rid of her,
They died.
Then they got
did.
killed. And then then it's basically just like I said. Unfortunately, there's an exposition dump box, which, like I said, I think I think maybe if it wasn't budgetary reasons, they would have went to like an institution or a research facility or somewhere, and somebody would have given them the information. Regardless, that would have had to have happened. So I think they got around it in a cost-effective way.
But to me, it just like just too convenient.
Like we said, just the kind
there
of
just wasn't enough set pieces for me. Like there was the warehouse in the beginning,
Which was cool.
it was her apartment, which was cool, and then the inn, which was cool.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there wasn't. It was almost unsatisfying. Like it just felt like it was a little bit, just an extended version of that short.
Yeah,
you know what I
everything-
mean? Like
everything
that's-
in this was just too
all the
convenient.
scares were just a little bit longer
like,
than the
you know,
short in the trailer, and that was it.
they said like it's probably for budgetary reasons, but like if the mom, if she goes out to because like she was always at the house, she never left the house.
Well, yeah.
no, she did because they went and got groceries or something.
Yeah, and then she went and got her kid.
So I think like an interesting set piece in the middle of the movie is like she's at a grocery store. And or just somewhere out in public and shit's happening. Like that could have been more interesting.
Or like if they're in a car driving down the road through the highway to go to the cops or something, and as they're hitting the lights through the highway or car drives
Things
by,
running for or
it's like
something,
in the back of the seat and it's moving around. Like
Yeah.
that'd be creepier.
or
but-
like somebody's walking outside at night and there's those floodlights that are motion activated and stuff.
well, they already did that kind of.
Well, yeah, there's another movie that did that too.
I just look at this movie.
The
and
Town That Dreaded Sundown had
Yeah.
a sequence with all those lights.
I just
the remake.
when I watch this movie, I felt like there's a lot that was left that could have been done better. I think
Could have been done a lot worse.
Yeah,
too.
it could have been done a lot worse.
So I
but
think to them though,
does it
like,
deserve a 78% of Rotten Tomatoes? It deserves more like a 30 or 40.
well, I mean, I think
I mean, like, I've seen a lot of movies this year that enjoyed way more. That
I think
got
that,
around
I think
that,
the review.
so.
I think when I say like a 6 out of 5 out of 10, it was effectively done. It was well acted. It was a bit bland.
if you put this out in 2006, it would have got lost in the muddle because it or maybe in that time period because it was just so much like those.
I mean, maybe
movies.
too. Like I'm kind of coloring the perception by the fact that a guy who directed a short got to make a feature.
I think
and that's what I would
it. I'm
love
just
for
trying
us to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean that would be amazing, and like I'm happy for his opportunity,
Yes, yeah.
and I want him to get more. Because
and I want to
that's
see,
like
and I think
that's
that
what your goal is.
I think that there's a lot of promise there to see what he does in subsequent films because this is his
But
first feature.
I think
and-
he just needs help. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't
needs
know.
a better
a different
script.
writer.
Yeah, and
Needs a
two,
better
though,
script.
yeah, and two though, you never know like how much time did they get?
Yeah.
you don't
Well,
know
and two,
what
the
went on
script,
behind
the
doors.
writer had worked on the Nightmare on Elm Street remake,
Yeah,
which
so they
is
didn't do him any
widely
favors.
despised.
But I just,
But to be fair, it sounds like that movie is a lot of studio pressure that forced it to be what it
but
was.
I just, and maybe this was too. I just watched this movie, and everything I saw from it just seemed to me. A lot of performances seemed forced. The characters were poorly written. There's so much of the movie that took me out of it instead of putting me into it.
So-
Whereas maybe like The Conjuring 2 was a little bit long winded and boring at some points, but there was still like enough to keep you in. And their character, the nun, was pretty good. And
that film also too hinged on a lot of the backstory because
Yeah.
it was about like real life investigators.
Yeah.
This being a straight horror film, they should have just kept rationing up the whole time. You give you little breaks for pacing, but it did not deliver.
like I
on
said, I think that being in this
being a I don't know.
being in this suburban house that from the looks of it isn't much larger than my house, but in my house you could go from top to bottom in less than 3 minutes.
oh, that house was pretty big.
But it's one of those things where I seriously doubt that was all in that house. It was probably
Yeah.
like different
Oh,
sets or
yeah,
something. But,
but
it's one of those things where like conveniently too large house. But
Yeah.
so I want to see more films not take place in a super huge house. But
Yeah, I don't know. Like I watched a movie, and I never, to be fair and honestly, I never didn't go into it like, oh yeah, this looks awesome. I kind of went to very skeptical.
I just remember reading that it tested well, and so I didn't really try to watch any
but
trailers.
you know,
for it.
maybe that talks about the level of horror that we have now that's mainstream, and
Yeah, it's
maybe
like-
it's like when something like this is so well received, it's kind of like, well,
What's
what are
been the
they
best
putting-
horror film this year? Can you guys?
I mean,
Straight-
I like
straight
The
horror.
Green Room, but that's not really straight
yeah,
horror.
I'm talking about like when somebody says horror.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
Because like you have stuff like The Conjuring 2 and this, which have gotten good reviews and are gonna make a lot of money. So people talk about being like a high point for horror in terms of like movies being successful. I have not seen like I still think that like Don't Breathe or The Blair Witch
Will be better.
Yeah,
Don't
so-
Breathe looks really awesome.
But
then
that's
again,
really not a
Don't Bre-
horror film. That's more
Yeah.
like a thriller. Because
But-
I like 10 Cloverfield Lane more
Yeah.
than The Conjuring 2 or this.
But,
But,
like,
it's
yeah,
not
me
really
too.
straight
The-
horror.
and I'm not trying to like love fest this movie, but like the last really good horror movie I watched in a theater was like Insidious 3, was one that really gave me an all around.
Was like, oh, this is a studio
Yeah.
horror film sequel. Yeah, like
And
Well,
it was
it was
good,
Krampus came out in December.
Yes,
thought that was
Krampus.
pretty good.
Yeah, but
But-
Krampus to me still wasn't as creepy as like Insidious,
Yeah.
and like
it
Insidious
was Insidious 3 was a weird
Yeah.
home run. I didn't expect.
And it was one of those movies where like they did like the character, you got to see him in the shadows a little bit, and then you saw him in person. It's like, oh shit, he's actually scary. This was like,
Yeah.
all right, guys, we got a
But I think it's
character.
funny
Look at the
because
grudge.
I've seen a
We're
lot of
gonna do that.
people who are like horror aficionados, like they for whatever reason think that James Wan directed all of them. They're like, I like James Wan, but I hate Insidious Chapter 3.
Yeah,
yeah, some
It's-
people don't like that one.
Well, a lot of people also thought James Wan directed this, and he did not.
Yeah, his name's all over just because of he's a producer.
Because he's made a lot
And I
of
think
money. in
I think he
horror
was on
industry.
set and had some involvement in it. I just think this movie needed a better script.
Yeah, it needed a better script. It needed
The same
Yeah.
cast,
You
the
know,
same director with the stronger script could have been
Yeah.
more memorable.
Yeah.
In an R rating, but
Yeah, I think
PG-13.
the PG-13 hurt it, but it helped it too because you get a lot of the younger people to go to it, which is what your core audience would be.
Yeah, because like the
You
core
know?
audience for horror is usually skews younger, and this being PG-13 and well reviewed, it has a little bit of street cred, and it's not.
I'm just
There's just some pretty decent movies out in theaters right now, and unless you just have to see horror, nothing else.
This would make a good Netflix watch.
yeah.
Or if this
absolutely.
came out like in a part of the year where there wasn't as much competition, it'd probably be all right.
But the fact they put it out in the middle of the summer showed they had a lot of confidence in it. So hopefully more horror can get those primetime slots and stuff. But I think they're going to be R rated. Aside from The Conjuring, like there's a more skew towards PG-13. But we'll see how all that shakes out. But I think we adequately covered this movie. So
Let us know what you thought of it.
that will bring this episode of the House by VSO podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video